Am I live? Does any YouTube live stream not start with this thing where the presenter's going, "Is it live? Can you hear me? Is there anyone there?" I know there are some people there actually, because I think for the first time ever, people have entered the chat room before I went live, which is really awesome. And it's not Rob from 8 or 16. Nothing against Rob. It's lovely when he joins, but quite often it's just me and Rob for the first 5 minutes, which is always a bit like, okay, where's everyone else? Love you, Rob. And thank you. Well, anyway, thank you. Welcome to Solo Club. Welcome to my weekly live stream. I'm not sure how many of these I've done now. I've not been keeping count, but I love doing them. And I do have this perennial issue in terms of scheduling. I had some nice feedback last time. Thank you if you gave me that. Mainly from people who didn't catch it, people who watched it later on and said, look, you need to do this a bit later for us US folk. Because I think at the moment, well, it's 4 p.m. in the UK at the moment. I think in the US, in certain time zones, it's fairly early in the morning and you're probably getting ready to go to work. You've probably started work already. Maybe I can just be on in the background in the corner as a nice distraction in between your team's calls, maybe. Who knows? Obviously, you'll still be working. But I'll try. The thing is, I don't want to do too many of these in the evening at my end. I know that's a bit selfish, but I'm already struggling to spend as much time as possible with my family. I don't want to keep taking time away from it. But if I have to do the odd one in the evening UK time, I'll do it just for you guys. Yeah, thank me later. Depending on how good the live streams are. So welcome back to Solo Club. As always, just my quick pitch. If you haven't checked out the Substack newsletter, please do. Every Friday, I send out a newsletter, not video. It's all traditionally written, lands in your inbox. And again, it's a bit like this. It's me talking about behind the scenes stuff. And it can be quite honest sometimes. There's a few things I've written about where I've thought, should I share that? But I thought, no, do it. You know, the whole point of that Substack newsletter list is to be really as open as I can be and share this stuff with you. So if you're already subscribed, thank you. If you're not, check it out. It's free. You can unsubscribe if you don't like it. No hard feelings. Yeah, so that was the little sales pitch out of the way. As Rob's here. Hi, Rob. Wasn't talking about you earlier. Nice things. So basically, there's two things we're going to do today. The first thing is I'm going to talk about something which I trialed and it failed in the end, unfortunately. And it was quite a sad failure, which I'll explain why in a moment. And the second thing, as always, the best bit of this is to get the questions from you. So please start noting down a few questions. And I can't stress this enough. You can ask anything. The only thing I do say is try and keep the tech questions to a minimum, because this isn't a tech channel. This is all about YouTube and running your own business and being your own boss and all that sort of stuff. So if you can try and keep the questions to that, that'd be fantastic. But just hit me with anything. So the thing I want to talk about first is PR and outsourcing PR. So last year, I struck up a partnership. Do I call it a partnership? More of a, basically, I started outsourcing PR to a very small PR agency, which in itself grew quite a bit during the time that I was with them. But to begin with, it was a very small PR agency, introduced to me by another a friend of mine who really trusted them and said, look, these are the guys to check out. And they were fantastic. The first thing to say, because if they are watching this, they know who they are. I have no bad feelings about this PR company. I'm not going to name them. That wouldn't be fair. But none of this is I'm not kind of suggesting they did anything wrong, which will become clear why in a moment. But on the whole, it was a fantastic experience, and I'm really glad I did it. I don't regret a single penny I spent on that company to do the external PR for me. But it taught me a massive lesson about PR, about this industry, and about what I should be doing with my money going forward. So if you're not, I mean, I think we all know what PR is. It's public relations. It's, you know, in the olden days, it was a case of writing up press releases and sending them to newspapers and magazines in the hope that your product would get featured in that newspaper or magazine. There is still an element of that, but PR has developed quite significantly over the last 10, 20 years. And these days, it's all really about, certainly in this industry, it's about connecting people like myself with brands. So it's getting you in front of brands that you can get review units from, you know, get embargoed products from, go to events and that sort of stuff. But it's also about widening your kind of experience being in front of people and getting you on stage, getting you talking at events, getting you becoming more of a becoming more of a public figure in your little niche. That's the whole point of it. And that was the kind of thing that I went into with this. And the idea was that I paid them money each month and they got me those opportunities. So they got me brand opportunities, sponsor opportunities, product review opportunities, and public appearance opportunities. And they managed all of that stuff. So all of those things happened in one way or another. And I started this kind of midway through last year. And for most of that year, we had some really big wins. So you might remember, if you watch the Marcus Reviews channel, you might be aware that I reviewed a Porsche last year. That was through that PR agency. I would never in a million years have got to review a Porsche Taycan last year if it wasn't for them. And there were several other reviews that I did last year and sponsorships that I gained that came from that company. So I didn't have to lift a finger apart from receive an email and reply to the email, or take a call with someone and say, yes, please, let's do that. I didn't have to do any outreach. I didn't have to build any connections myself. I didn't have to build these partnerships and spend hours and hours, kind of doing all the whining and dining that gets you those places and those associations with those brands. It was all done for me, and that's what I was paying for, and it worked brilliantly. So like I say, but to be able to put Porsche as a brand you've worked with, and Samsung, they got me in with Samsung initially, and a few others, like I say, it was money really well spent. However, at the start of this year and up until about a month ago, those opportunities really dried up and we were really struggling. And I have to say we here because I was working with them. And like I say, I'm not blaming them for this at all. But the opportunities completely dried up. There were a few things that kind of hung around that were looking interesting, but they never really happened. Even though we had a massive, great big list of brands that we were trying to get hold of, or they were trying to get hold of and work with, it was a case of knocking on locked doors and just getting nowhere. They were spending all this time proactively trying to get stuff for me, and it wasn't working all of a sudden. And to cut a long story short, we did part company completely amicably. And like I say, they were brilliant about it. No hard feelings whatsoever. It's probably not the last time that I'll work with them. I think something may happen in the future, but possibly. But we just decided amicably that it wasn't working. And a few things changed at their end and at my end, which made it quite a convenient time to go our separate ways. And I've been thinking a lot about this since, because it was a real shame. And I think we both said I've been in those situations where you've had partnerships or you've had external suppliers or perhaps freelancers and people that you work with who haven't done a good job, and they've done something either horrendously wrong or they've just not been good enough. And in those instances, saying goodbye isn't difficult at all. In this instance, it was, because we had all those successes in 2022 in quite a short period of time. And this year, it just didn't happen. And even though we knew there were things there were things we could do. And for whatever reason, I don't know what the problem was. It just didn't happen. So like I say, I've thought a lot about this over the last few weeks. And it's made me realize one thing, which I think you may even be thinking yourself with this. And it was something I was always kind of not suspicious of, but something I was always wondering at the back of my mind if this was the case, which is that it is really about who you know. So most of those opportunities that we got last year came from existing partnerships or existing connections that PR firm had with those brands or with people near those brands. It was like a little black book, if you like. And what had happened, I think, really, was that the black book had been exhausted. So we'd got to the end of it in terms of the opportunities for me. And then where do you go from there? Well, you have to then be proactive and try and find brand new and strike up brand new relationships. And that's really, 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 really hard in this industry. They did manage to do it a few times. Hisense, and one or two others, I won't mention, but one or two others, which they struck up relationships with, which I did manage to get some work with. Great. But they were few and far between. But as I say, it's you wouldn't believe how hard it is to get in front of the right person within a brand. Normally, that person who might be the head of PR, or these days the head of creator relations, there's all sorts of strange job titles that have sprung up. I've seen things like influencer manager, all this kind of stuff. Those people who work directly for the brands and who are employed and paid by those brands are hidden behind layers of management, 2 or 3 PR agencies of their own, a marketing team, Loads of stuff. You can't find their email address anywhere. You can't even find them unless you know who they are. They're very, very well hidden. So you have to know someone who knows that person, or ideally know that person directly. So I think that was the issue that we ran into, and that's why we had to part company. And it didn't make any sense for me to invest that money each month on something which was just basically people ringing up, ringing and sending DMs and emails, trying to get a foot through the door with these brands. Didn't make any sense. And what's happened since is that and this has happened actually throughout the last 3 years. I've met quite a few people in this industry, so other creators, either at events or just through, on Twitter or all over the place. And when you start to meet these other people who have been doing this for a bit longer and perhaps get invited to more events and are kind of in with other brands, you find that they're more than happy normally to share their contacts. And again, I won't name names now. I can't name names actually for one of them, but as someone I've met fairly recently, another tech creator, who has given me 3 contacts at 3 huge brands. I can't mention them. One of them I can't mention because, can I say this? I've got to be so careful. I'm doing something involving that brand over the next 2 weeks, which could only happen because that person gave me a contact, basically. But he very happily shared that stuff. And so I've got 3 very, very big contacts. One of them has come to fruition already. So there's been a product on the channel, on the Marketers Reviews channel, that I featured recently, which was a result of that guy giving me his contact for that brand. The next one, like I say, starts next week, and you won't see the results of that for another couple of weeks, but trust me, it's massive. And there's another one as well, which is equally as huge. So, and that's just come from me going to events and speaking to people and making friends and being as nice as you want to be in this industry, which isn't always that sounds strange. As outgoing as you can be, as not as nice, as outgoing as you need to be. I'm not actually much of a, I'm not a recluse. I'm certainly not. What's the best way of describing my personality? I'm the sort of person who goes to these networking events. It takes me a while to warm up. I can't go in and just talk immediately to anyone. I need to kind of walk around and suss the room out a little bit. I think most people do, to be fair. So I am outgoing, but I need to warm up. So sometimes that can be a bit of an effort, really. But I've put myself out there and done it because I know building those relationships is what gets you the connections. And equally, you make some great mates out of it as well, which is the best thing about it, really. So it's made me realize that spending that money on PR was a great experiment, and it did result in some very big wins. But ultimately, it wasn't sustainable because those black books in those industries are only so big. I've got my own. It's very small, but I've got a bunch of people that partners that I have and brand contacts that I have that are very valuable. And if I was a PR person, I could use those to, win clients and satisfy them, but only for a certain amount of time. I'd then run out of ideas and have to start doing things from scratch. And that's where it all kind of falls apart. So I think personally, if you go into this industry, it's really worth keeping that in mind. I've spent that money on the PR, on outsourcing PR for you, really. So I probably wouldn't do it again, even though we had those wins. I think with hindsight, and again, this isn't the fault of the PR company. This is just hindsight and things that you learn as a business person. But I think I wouldn't do that. I think I would spend that money elsewhere. And what I do with it is spend it on people who can remove tasks from my desk. So things that I do every day that I shouldn't be doing, things that are repetitive and aren't really, I hate this phrase, but moving the needle. I should be creating content, planning for the future, and building partnerships with people. That's what I should be doing. Because if you do all those 3 things, the big opportunities come in. Because throughout all that time with the PR company, I was equally having incoming, inbound inquiries from big brands, which resulted in some really big partnerships. And I didn't lift a finger. The only reason they came through is because I've been building this business, building the audience, being consistent with the content. But like I say, if I had my time again, I would definitely spend that money on outsourcing tasks and shoring up the processes and leaving it to other people. I'm doing that to a degree, but I'm not doing it enough at the moment. So that's something I'm going to be focusing on over the next few months. Because those best results do come from just doing your thing as a creator and making friends. It's incredibly, I've said this before, I think, on these live streams, that it's an incredibly inclusive community in content creation and influencer marketing and all this stuff. It's people will share a lot of stuff that you would never get in other industries. I can't imagine the industry that I used to work in, which was hospitality. It was the tech within hospitality was fiercely competitive. You'd never share anything, nothing with your competitors. And technically, the person that's given me these three big contacts is a competitor because he has a tech channel. He reviews the exact same things that I do, but we don't see each other as competitors. And we know that these brands need people like ourselves to get their products out there and create mass awareness of stuff. So it's just really refreshing. It's something I think I'll talk a lot about on these live streams because it's a reason that I love this. It's probably the main reason that I love this industry. It's so open and welcoming. You never really feel, although I've always got imposter syndrome, you never feel out of place, and you're always kind of welcomed with open arms. I'm sure there will be exceptions to this. I'm not too naive. I'm sure there'll be events I go to and I might meet the odd less than desirable person, but it hasn't happened yet. So, but yeah, that was my experience with outsourcing PR. And as I say, I won't name the PR company because they've done nothing wrong. I would recommend them, actually. I think I don't think I was the right fit for them in the long term, but they've got some long-term clients that are doing very well with them in different industries. And I think if you were in that industry, I would 100% recommend them. So if you do need a PR company, email me, mark@marketlessreviews.com, and if they fit, I'll put you in their direction. Right, let's have some questions. We've got not a bad number today, which is good. And yeah, we've got a question already, but while I answer this one, hit me with them, guys. Just put anything that comes to your mind, anything I've talked about, the stuff that I've talked about just now with the PR side of things and building brand relationships and stuff. That must have sparked some questions, or you might have completely unrelated questions. Hit me with them, please. Let me have a quick drink and answer Rob's question. Has Elon sent you a big check yet? Lots of Twitterers posting about their first Twitter Blue Creator ad share revenue payment today. No, because I haven't got the blue tick anymore, Rob. I am. Why did I remove it? I think it was when the price increased via iOS. I think if you'd signed up via iOS, the App Store, it went up at some point, and I just thought, what am I getting for this blue tick? Nothing. So I just got rid of it, really. But no, I mean, how much are people being paid? What am I missing out on? Is it thousands, millions? What's happening? I bet it's cents, isn't it? Good morning from Lakeland, Florida, Kevin. I'm very jealous. The weather in the UK, we love talking about the weather over here, is absolutely horrendous. It's gone back to like November, basically, today. It's July. Equally, I went to the Lake District this week to film something, which I can't talk about. I know it's really boring. And went to Coniston. I don't know if people are aware of that place. It's kind of mid-west Lake District. Beautiful place, but the weather. I climbed a hill. It's more of a hill than a mountain. It's not a mountain in real mountain terms, but we call it mountain over here. But I went up the Old Man. You have to be so careful how you say that, in Coniston. And the further up I got, the more it clagged over. And I'm not joking. At the top, it was like another world. It was like I was on some kind of weird sci-fi movie set. You couldn't see anything. Driving wind, driving rain. These kind of, as soon as it was very desolate up there, but occasionally you'd see another human being, and they'd kind of appear as a silhouette in the distance and gradually come towards you. And there were several times where I was thinking, is that a human? Is it something else? It's really weird. And then I dropped down and dropped down through the cloud, and it was blisteringly hot, sunshine. That happens a lot in the lakes, and it made for quite a good video, actually, which you'll see in August. But Rob says tens of thousands. I'm missing out, aren't I? What are they doing to get tens of thousands of dollars from Twitter and from Elon? No idea. Here we go, Rob. In terms of PR, how much work comes in? Let me read this again. In terms of PR, how much work comes in through you going to companies or companies coming to you? It's probably 95% people coming to me. I think I've talked about this before on live streams, certainly in on the Substack newsletter, where this stuff comes to you basically. When I first started this channel, well, when I first started the Marketless Reviews channel, I was convinced I'd need to do loads of proactive outreach because that is my part. I was a salesman for a long time before I got into marketing, and as anyone who's done sales will know, you spend most of your time trying to find leads, which means ringing, cold calling, cold emailing, doing all this horrible stuff. And I assumed that I'd have to do the same thing to get sponsors. And I did that a lot right at the start. So I think I waited until about 10,000 subscribers on Marketless Reviews and then thought, right, that's a big number. Let's reach out to some brands and see what happens. And I remember reaching out to Microsoft, a few headphone manufacturers like Sennheiser, Bose, Sony, Apple I reached out to as well. A few of them got back. Microsoft got back very quickly, actually, and said, look, yeah, we could potentially do something. We could potentially send you some stuff. We'll be back in touch. And then nothing happened. And again, I kept trying to follow it up and chase it. None of my previous tactics that used to work with quite a good hit rate, actually, in my sales days, none of it worked. And then time kind of drew on and the channel carried on growing. And I realized that actually that they come to you. But what happens, I don't have any proof of this, although I think it's fairly widely known on the grapevine, is that most PR companies, most influencer outreach companies who look for people like me have software they use which basically has filters, so that they'll look for creators who've got a minimum of 50,000 subscribers or minimum of 100k or whatever it is for whatever campaign they're running, and that's how they find you. And if they find you, great, they get in touch and away you go. So most of the sponsorships that you've seen on the Marketless Reviews channel have come as a result of that happening, me just receiving an email, basically. Equally, there's been one or two very big thing. In fact, I can reveal this now. I will reveal this on here because I can say it without any trouble. This is a really good example of a good answer to this question. Anyone who gets the Marketless Reviews newsletter every week will know that several months ago, I mentioned that I was about to have one of the biggest calls of my working life, basically, a bit later that day. And I dropped what I thought was a very big hint. But while I was talking about it, I picked up a HomePod and pulled a face and put it back down. It was Apple. So basically, Apple got in touch. I do have to be careful about how much I say about this because I signed quite a frightening NDA. I don't want the black car to pull up and tow me away. But basically, Apple got in touch. They'd watched one of my videos, which was about a MacBook Pro, and they were curious. Really nice, lovely way they approached it, but they were very curious as to how I tested the MacBook, which didn't perform well in the review. It was a poor review of it, and they wanted to know how I tested it, and could they see the footage that I used to test it, so they could do some of their own tests and suggest stuff. It was absolutely fascinating, and it resulted in me being on a call with the head guy behind Final Cut Pro and two or three other people in California. I wasn't in California. This was on WebEx, but you can't have everything, can you? But it was with Apple, and it was huge. And they sent me something which, just in case I can't mention it, I won't say what it was, but it was a product that I had for about a month, and it featured in several videos on the Marketless Reviews channel, and then it went back to Apple. I'll let you guess what that was. But and I've got a contact now at Apple that has been quite handy on a few things. So you never know who's watching. That's just an amazing example of you just never know. And I think that the video they picked up on had 25,000 views, that sort of thing, which is a good performing video, don't get me wrong, but it's not a massive video. You're not talking a 100, 200k video that's gone viral. It's a fairly small video, really, in YouTube terms, but there was something about it that pricked up their ears and got me in front of some fairly big people at Apple, and they were lovely, like I say, lovely about it. But yeah, so that's a very high profile example of something that came to me without me doing anything. So yeah, don't stress if you're going into this industry, guys. Don't stress over that stuff. Don't do what I do. I did. I spent lots of hours reaching out to these brands when I was wet behind the ears running this business. I wasted that time really because I just all I needed to do was carry on making content and carry on building the channel because these brands do come through. And I know this because it's not just me. My other YouTuber friends have found the exact same thing. So that's what's great about this. Alan says, loads of dollars. Patrick Boyle, finance YouTuber, $9,546. Not sure. I need to have a look at this, don't I? But I don't know how they're making that money. I guess it's through threads and that sort of stuff, isn't it? Which I think I talked about a couple of weeks ago. Well, yeah, interesting. Lots of ways to make money through content, which is good. Johan says you've got your X-Real Air glasses today. Fantastic. They're over there, actually, the ones that I've got. I think they have to go back, actually, but they're great. There's some, if you're not aware, they are AR. Try and say that when you're drunk. I'm not drunk. They're AR glasses that you can connect to your Mac or your Android phone, and you can see like a virtualized desktop. It's amazing. Alan, no question. I just want to say your openness and how you share what's happening is an inspiration. Solar Club, newsletter, webinars, podcasts, etc. is great. Makes me and people think what's possible. That's great. That's very humbling, Alan. Thank you. This is genuinely why I do this. I think I've said this before in previous live streams that because this industry is so open and there's so much to go at. There's so many eyes and ears to grab hold of and get people to hear or watch your stuff. Why shouldn't you share this stuff? And again, I've always said as well, I'm just a bloke from Northampton in the UK, and if you know what Northampton's like, I'll leave it there. But everyone can do this, honestly. That's lovely, Alan. Thank you very much. That's such a lovely thing to say. Alan, do you use AI producing your content? Yes, I do. So I use it in a couple of ways. One thing I use, like most people, is ChatGPT. So I use that generative AI for occasionally coming up with things like titles, video titles. Quite often, I'll have a video title that's been on the board for a while, and when it comes to publishing, I look at it and think that's just. Who's going to click that? That's really lackluster, really boring. So I just go into ChatGPT and type in, look, this is what the YouTube video is about. This is the audience. Give me 10 title ideas. And without doubt, it gives me 10 brilliant title ideas. And I usually use one of them. Not always. This is probably... It's 50-50 whether or not I use one I've come up with myself, or I use a Chat GPT inspired one. But the Chat GPT ones, I do tend to tweak a little bit. They're not always perfect, but they just give you that brilliant bit of inspiration. It's a brilliant tool, honestly. The other thing that I use not for Marco List Reviews videos yet, for reasons I won't bore you with, but for the Solo Club videos that I do, so that the regular Solo Club videos, I use a thing called Gling, which is an AI video editor. I've made a video about that, actually. If you have a look on the list of videos on Solo Club, there's an AI video editing tool review or something, I called it. Check that out. I do a little demonstration of it. But basically, to cut a very long story short, you take your A-roll filming, so you talk to camera and waffle on, yada, yada, yada. You might end up with 40 minutes of stuff, and you need to whittle that down to 8 minutes. You chuck those 40 minutes of footage into Gling, and it cuts out the silences. It finds what it thinks are the best takes and gets rid of everything else, basically. It's not perfect, like every piece of AI software we're using at the moment, but it does a damn good job. And also, it's non-destructive, so you can remove the things that you can bring back in the stuff it's removed. You can remove extra bits if you need to. But once you're done in Gling, you can export it to Final Cut Pro, Adobe Premiere, what's the other one called? DaVinci Resolve, and you open it up in your video editor of choice, and you have this edited piece of A-roll, which has taken about 10 minutes versus an hour of your time. It's absolutely game-changing. My favorite phrase. So yeah, that's how I use it at the moment. I don't do anything else with AI. I don't do any kind of AI, image generation for thumbnails. That's something that has caught my eye. Something I might try at some stage. I'm just keeping an eye on it. Literally, it's something which I think is transformative, and I think rather than being scared of it, you have to harness it and work out how best to use it. But for me and a lot of creators, AI has really saved a lot of time and resulted, more importantly, resulted in higher quality work, whether it be better titles, better YouTube descriptions, which I occasionally use it for, um, and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's all good stuff. Um, Rob says, "All right, calm down, Raking seller." Is that what's that a reference from? Oh, it's a reference from Field of Dreams, is it? Is that what you've said? If you build it, they will come. Um, I don't know what you were referencing there, Rob, but I'm sure it was it me getting all on my soapbox about something? Um, Alan, stability AI for images. What's that? This sounds interesting. Is this for creating images from scratch, Alan? Tell me more. I'm interested. I can't draw to save my life. I'm an awful designer. I bumble my way around Photoshop. So anything that can help me with imagery, as in that isn't moving, it's not a photograph, I need help with. Johan, have you tried the vidIQ plugins to improve tags, titles, and descriptions, or do you think ChatGPT is good enough at the job? I've been using vidIQ since the start, actually, Johan, and it's brilliant. vidIQ is a really big platform. It does all sorts of stuff. I use about 3% of it. The main thing in fact, actually, thinking about it, the only thing I use in vidIQ these days is the tag generator. So it's got a plugin for Chrome where when you're in the YouTube Studio upload window and you're putting your description and stuff in, when you get to the tags, it's got a tag generator. You go into that, you give it a phrase like MacBook Air review, and it gives you loads of suggestions along with things like the kind of competition for those tags, all that sort of stuff. Tags are there's a theory that they don't matter at all these days. I just use them by default just because why not? Even if they don't do anything, the fact they're there might help. Who knows? But yeah, that said, you can use ChatGPT for tags. I have used it for that occasionally, particularly if you do that thing with ChatGPT where you start the conversation and say, "Look, this is the video titles that I want." Then you say, "Give me a description. Give me a video description for these." For this video, gives you that, and then you say, and now can you give me some tags for it as well? So if you continue a conversation with ChatGPT, which is where it's so handy, it can be quite useful in that respect. Yes, it's okay. So this is a stability. It's AI for images. Describe what you want, and it draws the images for you. I've played around with a few of those tools, and they never work very well. It's always, the results are always absolutely hilarious for the wrong reason. But I know it's only going to get better, and maybe I'm just not a very good prompter for that. So I will check it out, Alan. Thank you very much for the recommendation. Rob's still talking about Field of Dreams. Brilliant. I've not seen that film for absolutely years. For years and years and years. Any other questions, guys? Come on, hit me with it. I've got 9 people on the live stream. So Richard says that you found the tools don't work very well. Yeah, I mean, that's been I think generative text, which I can never say properly, does work brilliantly. It's a bit overwhelming how well it works. The image stuff, again, maybe it's all about prompting these days, isn't it? That word itself has spawned an entirely new line of jobs and work, which is great, obviously. But maybe you just have to be better at the prompting. Who knows? Who knows? I'll check it out though and have a play with it. Any other questions, guys? Hit me with them. Let's see if we can get beyond 33 minutes. Richard says ChatGPT has not been too bad for creating text for adverts. Yeah, I must admit, I'm glad I don't work in my previous industry anymore. Again, if I was still working in marketing, I would have harnessed AI for my benefit and not been too scared of it. But I think it would have been a lot harder in that industry to battle against it and battle against the people who just use AI as shortcuts to get useless content written. So yeah, it does bother me a little bit, that sort of stuff. Craig, have you tried Bard? Any comparison to ChatGPT? I have played around with Bard, but quite an early version of it. So I had a beta version of it that I think I applied to the very early beta, and it was terrible back then, really bad. I think it has improved. I think I've used it a bit since, and here and there, and they all do roughly the same thing, really. I think ChatGPT is definitely the leader. It powers a lot of the AI stuff that you see in other applications and platforms. It's just there's so much development gone into that. It's swallowed up most of the internet. Um, so yeah, Bard's okay though. I think the more recent versions of it are pretty good. And also, what Google showed at Google I/O looked quite interesting. Even though they did say the phrase AI about 7,000 times. So Alan says AI depends on the volume of data. That's yeah, I suppose what I just said really in terms of swallowing up the internet. But it depends on the volume of data it has to analyze. So it will get better. I work in IT. If you hadn't guessed, did have an idea that you might do. Rob, the F1 question. Yeah, ask me anything. Literally. Were you happy for Lando at the weekend? Really happy for him. Yeah, it was a great race actually. Watched loads of people drop off now who aren't interested in motor racing. I'll keep this brief. Brilliant. I love Lando. I'm a big fan of Lando. They're all the British drivers. I do like non-British drivers as well, but I'm particularly a big fan of Lando, Lewis Hamilton as well, and excuse me, sneezed right at the wrong moment, and George Russell. I think they are fantastic drivers. I think they're just really decent guys. But Lando in particular, he's got a very cheeky side to him as well, which I quite like. But he did brilliantly. He did fantastically. So, yeah, I like that question, Rob. Yeah, he can always throw an F1 question at me. Any other questions, guys? Hi, Dean. There's some new names actually. There's some people on here that I've not seen before, which is fantastic. Bless you. Thank you. That might be the first time I've sneezed on a solo club live stream, I think. Normally, when that happens on Markerless Reviews videos, I can just chop it out, which is good. What else can I tell you about? I'm trying to think. There are lots of things happening at the minute which are all a bit secret, which is really annoying when you can't talk about them. It's even more annoying for you guys because you probably just want to know what I'm talking about. What else can I tell you about that's interesting? I'll tell you something that is really kind of sorry, Alan just said, okay, boring. On camera mic. Oh, I thought you were referring to the F1 stuff, Alan. Bear with me. Let's bring that back up. There we go. This isn't boring at all. On camera mic or wireless? Depends on the situation, Alan. So funny enough, actually, earlier today, I was filming some A-roll in this studio, and I thought I needed to move around a little bit, and I thought, why don't I use the wireless, lav mic, the DJI mic for that, rather than using my on-camera shotgun? And I thought, well, why? What benefit is that going to give me? Because I'm still going to be near the camera all the time. It didn't make any sense. I was basically going to do it for the sake of it. Whereas what I should do, and I did do in the end, was just use the shotgun mic as I always do in the studio. It very much depends on where you are, Alan. So if you're out and about doing stuff, if you're vlogging, these days, I mean, previously I used to use a shotgun mic on the camera for that. These days, I always use those DJI clip-on mics. They're just much more. I think they give much better sound. They're much better at dealing with wind noise. They're much more convenient, much more slick to use. They're just great, really. But like I say, they don't make sense in here. In here, just keep the shotgun mic on. So it depends. Yeah, it depends on where you are, what you're doing, really. Johan says you're excited to watch the F1 in X-Real Air glasses. That would be a great experience, actually. I didn't get to do that, unfortunately, but yeah, that would be a great thing to try. Richard, you appear to buy the Macs with the smallest SSDs. I always find that is an issue when I have something small than 1 terabyte. How do you manage with 256 gig? Lots of people ask me this question, and the way that I deal with it in two ways, Richard. The first way is that I never edit, or very, very rarely edit off the internal drive on my Macs. Although that said, the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which is what I'm talking into at the moment, this does have I think I spec'd it up to 2 terabytes because it was going to be my main editing machine. But that 2 terabytes is only there for in case of an emergency. Really, every video I edit, I do off an external SSD. Always have done. The other way that I kind of get round the minimum storage is everything's in the cloud. So I use Dropbox for right or wrong. I used it for a long time, which is why I've not come off it. But I use Dropbox for most of my files. I use iCloud for some stuff as well. My Lightroom library is in the cloud. I don't install a huge number of apps, really. Most of the apps that I install are very lightweight. So things like Ulysses, Slack, TickTick, Spark Email, they're all very small apps. They don't take up much space. I've basically never run out of space on those base storage Macs ever. It's never been a big deal for me. Yeah, I do get a lot of people not asking quite as nicely as you actually, Richard, who seem to think I'm an absolute lunatic for recommending people buy the smallest storage. But unless you're putting loads of stuff on your Mac, and I don't know why you'd do that anyway, really, if I'm honest. I think cloud storage is just ubiquitous these days. And as I say, if you're going to be editing a lot of 4K video, then it's much cheaper, much more cost effective to get an external SSD than it is to spend hundreds and hundreds, thousands in some cases on internal Mac storage, because it gets very expensive. So yeah, it's never been an issue. Never run into an issue with it at all. But good question. Alan, any Amazon Prime Day purchases, or is it past its best? I talked about this with Rob yesterday on the recording of 8 or 16, and basically because I'd been away this week doing a lot of traveling, and it's been ridiculously busy, I actually forgot Prime was taking place. Even though I get lots of emails from Amazon in terms of the affiliate stuff, I completely forgot about it until last night. I was sitting there thinking, was it last night or was it the night before? When did it end? Was it Wednesday? This is how much. Yeah, it was Wednesday, wasn't it? So Wednesday night, I suddenly thought, let's have a quick check on Prime. This was about 9 o'clock. Checked my phone, saw a couple of things that looked fairly interesting, and then put the phone down, watched a bit of TV, totally forgot about it, went to bed, woke up and thought, wow, that's the first year I've not bought anything on Amazon Prime Day. Do I miss it? No, not really. All I ever tend to buy on Prime Day is memory cards. That's it, which are very useful, obviously, but not very exciting. Memory cards or occasionally coffee machines. And I've had to stop myself from buying coffee machines because you don't need many coffee machines, and yeah, they're expensive. Alan, thinking of starting a channel on advanced driving. I teach advanced driving at the weekend as a volunteer. I think it's a great idea, Alan. Go for it. Although you might get a few people telling you off if you do videos in the car. To put some context around that, I basically on the way up to the lakes this week, I decided to maximize my time in the car on the way there, because it was about 4 hours in the car, by filming 2 videos while I was driving. So I filmed a solo club video and also a Mark Ellis reviews video. Got them shot. I really enjoyed the process, actually. It was very straightforward. Got them shot, got them edited, published them. And I thought, well, after I published them, I thought, I bet someone says something about me driving, because this is the YouTube, this is the comment section, this is what happens. There'll be one person who says something. And sure enough, I think 2 people actually said something. One guy said, I can't believe, no, he said, are you really driving and reviewing something at the same time? To which I replied, I think it's fairly descriptive in the video, what I'm doing in the video. I can't remember what the other person said, but I'm 42. I've been driving for a long time. I think, like anyone, I've spoken to people in the car while I've been driving. I also watch a lot of car reviews, and I've watched Top Gear and the Grand Tour for many, many years, and they do it all the time. It's not illegal. So there's a point to me saying this, actually, Alan, which is if you do that kind of thing, you will get a few idiots suggesting that you should be more careful with your filming. Ignore them, because it's not illegal. Like I say, as long as you're in control of the car and you're not holding the camera, you're not looking at like out the window that way, you're fine. But I think it's a great idea. Car stuff on YouTube is huge. The other thing I would say though with it is I wouldn't just think about YouTube. If you may be thinking this anyway, but if you're not, it's definitely worth considering, which is to focus on short form content as well. I watch a lot of short form car stuff on TikTok and occasionally on Instagram and YouTube. I love it. I love these short, sharp videos about cars. the stuff that I guess you would be making would be perfectly fit for that. So I'd probably start with short form stuff. Just make a few short form videos because it works. People love cars, particularly like I say on the vertical video format. Alan, yes, I saw those and did comment to myself, but there are others that do it all the time. I understand why people perhaps saw that and thought, "Is that really safe to be? He must be thinking about the video all the time." I've made hundreds of YouTube videos. This is the thing I'd say. I and also there were two video. I purposefully picked two videos that were very very easy to make. So I was talking about things that I could just talk to a mate about. Literally, I think the Solar Club video was talking about the whole league table thing in YouTube Studio, and the Mark Ellis reviews video was talking about the MacBook Air. Two topics I'm very familiar with. I can talk about literally with my eyes closed. I didn't have my eyes closed, obviously, but it was no different to talking to a mate in the passenger seat. And also, if you've done this kind of stuff, you'll know that those filming sessions take place. They're about 10, 20 seconds a time, 30 seconds a minute, maybe. They're very short, sharp bursts of filming. And as you guess, I didn't do it while I was herring down the outside lane at 70 miles an hour or in loads of traffic. I waited until it was safe to do so. So, yeah, but I understand why people would look at that and think, but trust me, being a father of a very young boy, I'm very careful with my time, with my own health and body and those around me. Rob, did you get away with doing that sponsored video from the car, the one that you forgot you'd agreed to have published this week? Double book yourself. I'm glad you mentioned that, Rob. Thanks. Yeah, so that was a sponsored video. Yeah, that was the MacBook Air video. So that was sponsored by TomTok, which is a bag which is over there somewhere. But yeah, it was a bag from a company called TomTok. If they're watching this, it doesn't matter. They probably know this was the case because I kind of hinted that it was the fact when I emailed them. But basically, on Sunday last week, I had an email from them saying, "Hope you're well. Just wanted to know when we could get the rough edit of your video for this week." And I looked at the email and thought, "Oh no!" Basically, what I'd done, like a complete idiot, was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I'd moved around some videos. I'd moved that video back by a week, so I'd put it back to next week, basically, without even thinking about the fact that I had promised a proof, as in an A-roll edit for them this week. And one of those moments, I immediately have to go into solution mode and think, right, okay, I've got no time next week at all because I'm going to the Lake District, I'm filming this video and that, and whatever. How do I do this? And then that's when I thought, okay, let's just do it in the car. It's an easy video to make. Funny enough, the bit that I didn't do driving was that sponsor read. So you'll see me talking at the start in the car, and then it cuts to me talking about the sponsor, and you don't see me at all. The reason you don't see me, but you hear me, is because I'm parked up in a service station somewhere, because I did need to sit there and read from the sponsor thing. So again, being very careful. But yeah, so that was the one. It was the MacBook Air video, Rob, which is performing really well. So it was worth doing. That was one thing. And TomTok are happy, which is all that matters, really. Alan, you may see me driving around Northampton, so don't have a go at me. I don't live in Northampton anymore, Alan. I've moved out to Northampton about 3 years ago. But it's my hometown. I'd never have a go at you at all, ever. Bear with me. What's the best way to learn how to use Motion and Final Cut Pro? I make all my adverts for our company and don't really have much time to complete courses. Can you recommend some sort of idiot guide? I do have a Final Cut Pro course on Skillshare, Richard, just saying. You can try it for free for like 2 weeks and then cancel your subscription if you want to. But apart from that, I would just use YouTube and just do a search for some. I think the way that I learned to use Final Cut Pro many years ago was trial and error, really. But I started just by using it, just sussing stuff out for myself. And then as soon as I hit something which I got confused by or thought, how do I do that? Or I've seen other videos where they've done this thing, it must be possible in Final Cut Pro. I would immediately go to YouTube, search for that thing that I wanted to do, watch the video, and I can guarantee that you'll find everything you need to know about Final Cut Pro and Motion on YouTube. I do it that way. It's kind of like iterative learning. So just bumble your way along, get stuck, ask YouTube, learn that new thing, save that video somewhere, and carry on. That's what I do. That's the best idiot's guide that I found anyway. Alan, Prime Day purchases everything from Samsung T7 SSD to Anker headphones to nose, ear, eyebrow trimmer to an air fryer. I know that it's the number of things that you can buy on Prime. That's partly why I'm glad that I didn't actually go through with it and buy stuff, because I do buy things I just don't need. And everyone's got an air fryer now, haven't they? There must be no more air fryers needed to be bought on this in the UK, at least. Have I missed any questions on here? No, I don't think I have. I'm just scrolling through. I hate the thought that I may have. Oh, I did miss one. Here we go. Dean, did you shoot much video before becoming a YouTuber? Yeah, I did. I suppose in two ways, really. So I've always been very keen on photography and kind of amateur, amateur photography and that sort of stuff. So that's been something most of my life, actually, that I've really enjoyed doing. But then when I left my the business that I worked at for 15 years, whatever it was, when I started my own little external marketing consultancy business, I built different things into it, and one of the things that I built into it was video production, videography, as it was kind of termed then, really still is probably, I guess. And yeah, did loads and loads of corporate shoots. So I did loads of kind of talking head corporate things and promos for stuff, and I did that for about 3 years, I think, and that's really where I cut my teeth with editing and getting used to using a camera properly in terms of using it for video, getting all the gear that I needed. So I came into YouTube with some knowledge, some skill, not amazing skill, but some skill, and some gear as well, which was quite handy. So yeah, I did do that. It's always been a big passion of mine. Richard, what was your favorite part of New York? Oh God, that's hard. I loved all of it. I keep thinking about it. It's one of those trips that I can't get out of my head. It's like it didn't happen, even though it absolutely did happen. It really, because it was so surreal, and I was visiting somewhere that I'd wanted to go to for years and years and years, and I've only ever seen in the movies. It was, I know that sounds really touristy. It was just a very surreal trip. So picking one thing, I think. Can I pick two? I'm going to pick two just because I can. The first thing was the drive from the airport, from JFK into Manhattan. When I first saw that Manhattan skyline, I got a video of it. I wanted to show the family as well. But I didn't watch it from behind the camera. I kind of put the camera in front of me and then just watched it. That was just epic, just seeing it appear in that really iconic skyline. Again, that I've only ever seen on TV. It was suddenly coming towards me, was just incredible. The other thing that I really, really enjoyed was the Brooklyn Bridge walk. So I got a subway into Brooklyn, then went from that route basically. So took the Brooklyn Bridge from the Brooklyn side into Manhattan. And it was one of those things where I filmed a video, because of course I did. I filmed a video on the way over it. So that's where I did the review of the 15-inch MacBook Air. So I was kind of combining sightseeing and walking across this bridge with talking to myself about this MacBook. So it was a very strange, probably one of the weirdest first experiences anyone's ever had of that walk. But I did take it in as much as I could. It's impossible not to. But I'll be doing that again, I think, when I go back at some stage with the family. That's definitely something that we'll do, because that was just epic. That view is just, we don't see that stuff in the UK. The most impressive things we have in the UK are certain parts of London which are very iconic, but then they're not as big as New York. It's still not as grand as New York. I suppose the other thing is somewhere like the lakes, the Lake District, North Wales, northern parts of Scotland, the Highlands and stuff. That is epic in terms of scenery, but even that doesn't really come close, I don't think. I can say that because I'm British, but Rob, what was the best thing you ate in New York? This is really, is it easy? No, it's not, is it? Well, no, I've got to pick something, haven't I? I've got to pick one thing. Yeah, it was definitely Katz's Deli. So I went to Katz's Deli and had the famous pastrami on rye sandwich, which was $25 for a sandwich. crazy. Massive though, really, really big, and just amazing. Like the most delicious meat I've ever tasted in my life. I had it with fries as well, and pickles, and needed to be carried out. I wasn't, but I did need to be. If there was an ambulance outside, it would have been quite handy. If you go, you have to go to Katz's. That was a recommendation actually from Patrick Rambles. He's a big fan of New York as well, and he said, just whatever you do, go to Katz's. It's from When Harry Met Sally. It's been in loads of films and what have you. But just thinking about it now is making me hungry. Thanks, Rob. Right. Oh, another question. Alan, did you get a DJI Osmo Action 3 bundle, e.g. traveling combo or standard combo? Did you use the Osmo Action extension rod kit? Yeah, so again, full disclosure, DJI sent me all of that stuff. They sent me the Osmo Action 3, and it was the Action combo, so you get the battery pack. Let me grab it. I've only got the battery pack to talk about, but so you get the battery pack with the 3 batteries in it, and you get the extension rod, which is very useful. I didn't use it, funny enough. I forgot to use it in New York. So when I filmed the Apple Watch video, which is when I was doing that tour, I was just holding it in my hand like that, which you can do with that camera because it's got great stabilization. But since then I've used it with the extension rod, and it is a bit better. You get more reach, obviously, and that sort of stuff, and get some more interesting shots. But yeah, with the Action combo, you get that. You get I love the stuff DJI makes. Everything's so smart and useful and functional. But yeah, you get this little battery pack with 3 batteries. Battery life is great as well. Very, very good. Hope and Glory says, what was your biggest stress about growing subscribers, and how happy are you now with your count? The biggest stress, I think the biggest stress is something that never really goes, and it happens nearly every week, I think, which is you get these fallow periods where it just slows down to a crawl. And again, this comes from the terrible habit that I have and most YouTubers have. If anyone says they don't do this, it's not necessarily a lie, but they're probably stretching the truth a little bit. It's that habit of checking YouTube Studio all the time, going into it and pulling down to refresh and checking your numbers. The more you do that, the more you'll see how much that number ebbs and flows, and it ebbs and flows unbelievably. But you do get these fallow periods where even if you don't check it for hours and hours and go back, you've perhaps gained 1 or 2 subscribers, which is still great. It's still 1 or 2 people that have decided to hit the subscribe button. But when you get past a certain number, it gets more frustrating, I think, and it's hard not to get frustrated by it. And it's silly because if you didn't check that number for a week, you'd see great growth. If I'd checked it now and then left it until next Friday, the number will have gone up quite significantly from now. I'm trying to do that, and I always recommend that people do it, but it's tough. It's hard not to, because this game is all about numbers. And in terms of if I'm happy with my count now, I couldn't be happier. I mean, I've got 100. Let's do a live check now. So on Solo Club, I think we're at 1,280-ish, which is amazing. That's 1,280 people. Imagine that number of people in a room. It's loads of people who have clicked that button. On Mark Ellis reviews, the time of speaking, pull down to refresh, 109,502 subscribers, which, imagine that many people in a room. It's an unthinkable number. I've never had that number attached to me in any way apart from part of my mortgage. It's just, you can't get your head around it. The number of people that have clicked that button is just unbelievable. So I don't know how I couldn't be happy with that. I think if I wasn't happy with it, something would be wrong with me, really. I think I'd have to take a good look in the mirror and think, why are you not happy with that number? I want it to grow. I want it to keep growing, absolutely. But yeah, it's still overwhelming, really. The more we get, the more we want. It's true. It's the same thing with money, isn't it? You hear a lot of people who have made millions say, I made my first million. Then I thought, well, now I want 10 million. So that they get to 10 million and they think, okay, my mate's got 50 million. I want 50 million. They get to 50 million. Then their mate buys a boat and he's bought a boat because he's got 100 million. So it goes on. You're never really happy. It's why chasing numbers is a daft game, really. Rob, you've had your FX3 for over 5 minutes now. Surely it's time for an upgrade. When's the red coming? I if I had less self-control with this stuff, I would have replaced the FX3 ages ago with an FX6 probably. But funnily enough, someone came to this studio recently, a guy called Andy, who I've done some work with. Rob probably remembers him. In fact, it's the guys that shot the B-roll for the Porsche video. They've just bought an FX6, and they brought it here to do some filming for something that will go out on another channel soon. And lovely camera, but they spent ages trying to set it up. And I said to them, what's the biggest difference between that and the FX3? And they said, all of the menus, all of the stuff that you have to do to get this thing running. And even when they were here, it kept saying stuff which didn't make any sense. And I just looked at that and thought that would cause so many problems. Getting a red camera, Marques Brownlee did this. He went from DSLR cameras to red cameras a long, long time ago when he was still shooting stuff in his bedroom at university. And the problem with that is that the more complicated stuff you bring in, the more expensive gear you bring into a YouTube studio, the more work you create for yourself. So things like red cameras, okay, they're cinema quality, literally, and they're wonderful bits of kit, but equally they don't have autofocus, so they don't have autofocus like the FX3, and again you have lots of different setup stuff that you have to think about each time. You can't really just hit record. There's lots of stuff you've got to do to get the exposure right, and the FX3 combines some of that stuff with ease of use, basically, and one of the best autofocus systems on the market. And this is a great question because I can afford. To be completely open, I could buy a red camera tomorrow, and it wouldn't hurt the business at all. And it might benefit the business in terms of image quality, but it would completely ruin my productivity. It would decimate my time. Whereas the FX3, I know it like the back of my hand. Shouldn't say this, but touch wood, it works every single. It's an absolute tank. I can say that now because I do have a backup, thankfully. But so yeah, at the moment, no need for an upgrade. The only thing I do think about is I've got a B cam now. So I've got a Sony A7 Mark IV, which is the B cam. So whenever you see second angles, either on this channel or on Mark&Less Reviews, that is the A7 IV, which is a brilliant camera, not only for that, but for stills as well. So I'm using that for thumbnails. So I've got two cameras now, along with the action cam stuff. And my little ZV-1, which is quite handy for vlogging and things like that. But the only thing I would probably spend more money on is potentially another lens or two, which I could do with, and possibly a C cam. I think having a third camera would be quite handy, just for another angle and just complete peace of mind if everything goes wrong. Because if you haven't got a camera, although I'm saying that, I could just use this, couldn't I? I'm always saying the camera doesn't matter. And here's me talking about, but Rob, this is your fault. I'm going to hide that question, because before we know it, I'll have bought a red camera before this stream ends. Where are we? More questions. Loads of brilliant questions, guys. Thank you for this. Richard, just signed up to the Skillshare class. We'll take a look at your lesson later. I didn't just put that on the screen. Basically, I just press these questions. I don't read them before I put them on. This wasn't a reason to try and get you all to, sign up to my Skillshare class. But yeah, that's great news, Richard. Enjoy it. Like I say, I think you can just cancel that subscription before 2 weeks. Don't quote me on this, but I think you can without spending any money on it. So, but you can watch it within that time. No problem at all. Right. Ben, this is the classic question. How do you manage your time between two channels as well as your family? I suppose the main thing is this is my main job. I don't do this as a side hustle anymore, as they say. I did for a couple of years. I couldn't have done two channels and my previous business and the family back then. That would have been impossible. It's very difficult, Ben. And this period now is a very good example of where it's particularly hard, because I am getting invited to new things, which are very exciting. I'm getting lots of stuff sent to review, and I've, for good or worse in terms of my time, I've started this second channel, and I love this second channel. I don't want to give it up. I don't want to have too many gaps in content, although there are some here and there. The podcast hasn't finished, by the way. I've got 4 or 5 in the can that I still need to edit. So I've got some very I was going to say expectant guests, but they're not. They've been very patient, the ones that I've interviewed. So it's just very difficult, Ben. It's a case really of being realistic about what you can do and dropping things that you shouldn't be doing. there's one or two things that I still do each month that I think I'm going to have to drop. One, which is going to be quite painful, nothing to do with the channel, nothing to do. It's a legacy thing that I do, which I think is going to have to go. Unfortunately, and that's going to be quite hard because it involves friends, but they'll be very understanding. But that's a perfect example of a sacrifice I'm probably going to have to make just to ensure, basically, the main thing, the only thing that matters, is that I can get home at 5:30 or before, ideally, and be there for my son and do bath time and put him to bed and stuff at night. That's all that matters, actually. It's that task, or that bunch of tasks, those three things. Oh, dinner times, obviously, as well. Those three things. My son's 1, by the way. If you're wondering why is he, if his son's like 10 or something, but he could put himself to bed then. It's that bunch of tasks that relate to my son that are the only thing that matter. And the only reason I do this stuff is because of him. So that is what has to get done each day. So that is top of mind all the time. And trust me, that makes all the difference. That really spurs you on. For instance, a very good example of this is that before this live stream, I was filming the A roll for a sponsored video that needs to be sent off for approval, ideally tomorrow. Now, I've only filmed a third of it, probably, the A-roll. Now, the old me would have thought, okay, I'll do the live stream and go back to finish off that A-roll either afterwards or tonight, even though it's Friday night. I'm not doing that now, no chance, because if I do that, I'll miss those events with my son, those to-do list items with my son. So that's not happening. So basically, I'm going to do them tomorrow morning. Simple as that. And or maybe even Monday. I can probably do it Monday. So you just have to make sacrifices, but you have to make the right sacrifices. I would never sacrifice, for instance, bath time with my son for shooting A-roll. That would be balmy. So yeah, it's priorities basically. Have I missed other questions here? Here we go. Alan Super Dad. Not sure about that, but I think anyone who's got kids will know that feeling. It's non-negotiable. You don't even think about it. That your kid is the most important thing in your life, and that they do not get to lose out because you want to finish that video, or there's a prospect that you need to ring. Rather, no, who cares? Go home and spend time with your kids. Everything can wait. David, glad to see you got your priorities right. There you go. Yeah, hopefully I have. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, it's really hard, but yeah, absolutely. Why don't you set up a laptop or PC to mine stock trade bot to make the work for you? I do that, and it's super easy as a second income, mind you, as you have to me on Windows or Linux. Linux. Sorry, I always say Linux. People love it when you say Linux, by the way. They don't. They hate it. I could do. I mean, in terms of revenue, everything's fine. To be honest, I've got no worries with that at all. It's just time. It'd be nice if there was more time. Really, that's the thing. But I think, as I said right at the start of this live stream, I will be outsourcing more stuff, and because the stuff that I have outsourced already has proved very useful in terms of getting that time back. So that's the key to this, really. David, and cats. I haven't got a cat. I've got a dog, which is like my first child. He's 14 now, so he can definitely put himself to bed and feed himself. But he doesn't bath himself, but yeah, pets as well. They're very important. Right, guys. Bearing in mind what I've just been talking about, it's now 7 minutes past 5, and I need to very quickly pack a few things up here and head home. I need to crack on and go and do the thing that I've been talking about, which is spending time with my family. Guys, thank you so much for getting involved. I think this has been the liveliest questions I've had so far. Hope and glory. Yeah, that's a really good point. If you did miss the start of this, what happens with these videos is that although they're live streams, the great thing about live streams, and again, something you need to know if you're going to start doing this stuff, is that they turn into regular videos. So you don't have to do anything. So basically, I finish this, I end the broadcast, and then I don't know why it takes so long, but it takes YouTube about 12 hours to turn it into a regular video. But that's what happens. It basically turns into a regular video, ends up on your feed, and people can just watch it. And they perform really well, actually. I've been surprised by how well these perform after they've happened. So, yeah, definitely watch it if you get a chance from the start. But yeah, thanks guys for watching. Thanks for getting involved. This has been a really good question Q&A section. It's my favorite bit of it. This is one of my favorite videos that I make each week. Don't tell anyone else, but I do really enjoy it. And yeah, like I said at the start of this video, if you haven't checked out the Substack newsletter yet, just check out or click that link in the description. I've done way too much talking this week. My God knows what I'm talking about at the moment. It's all gone wrong. But yeah, it's time for me to go, basically. I need to have a beer, need to go and see my son. And yeah, next week, I think it's the same time. I will experiment with different times, but I do want to keep it nice and consistent if I can. So anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. Cheers, guys. Have fantastic weekends, and I'll catch you hopefully next week. Cheers.